Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at a neat little offering I found on DriveThruRPG by Stephen J. Ellis, Eve of Rebellion. It's a traveler adventure that's essentially diceless. It's mostly role-playing and empire building, in some cases literally. It's a neat little adventure that came out in 2017. I've been looking at it for a while now, 5 years, and I finally decided to pull the trigger, and I'm very glad I did. I enjoyed this immensely. I'm going to go through it in detail, but there aren't really spoilers. There's only one real spoiler that's kind of lurking in my video, and even that I'm going to try not to give that up. But everything else is going to be how you play it, not how you read it. So if you don't want any spoilers to see what's inside, I'd recommend you tune out now. Otherwise, we're going to take a look at Eve of Rebellion. This one of 3 adventures that Mr. Ellis has written and published. The most recent was published in 2022. I'm going to grab the other 2 when I get the opportunity. Also, just want to mention that I'm still doing a subscription drive, always doing a subscription drive. Everybody who's subscribed already, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. I can always use more subscribers, anything to help grow the channel and make things bigger and better. Also, I have a Patreon going. I need a little bit of cash influx to go ahead and improve my electronics, give myself a backdrop for Traveler or other videos, not just my Greyhawk map for AD&D. I'd like to have other backdrops, but for that I need a little capital, and for that I would need your help. So if you could take a look at the Patreon, that'd be great. If you can't, that's fine. And that's all I've got to say. So today, Eve of Rebellion, from Classic Traveler, arguably to Mega Traveler, today on page 121. So Eve of Rebellion, Stephen J. Ellis. This was published in 2017, published by March Harrier Publishing. The idea behind this is you are one of 5 characters of the Imperium, and you're going to be basically setting the course for the future. Nice forward by Timothy Collinson about his experience playing this at a convention. The idea is this is really more of a player versus player type of thing rather than a standard traveler adventure. You're not going to be throwing a bunch of dice. You'll be throwing a minimal amount of dice, and most of it is going to be role-playing, and it's designed for a 4-hour session for 5 players plus a game master. So he goes into the background a little bit. It's 1116. The Imperium is in danger. A lot of people don't like Emperor Strefan's policies. Strefan is holding court right now, and you are playing one of 5 characters. You are playing Emperor Strefan himself. I'll go into the characters in a moment. Well, I'll go to the 5 characters in a moment. I won't take a look at that now. He has made a few changes from canon in this to make the story a little more dynamic. And the changes in canon are that Empress Iolanthe, which is Strefan's wife, died in 1112 rather than dying with Strefan during Dullinor's assassination of 1116. Duke Norris of Regina is summoned to the capital in 1116 rather than still being in the Spinwood Marches. Emperor Strefan thinks the Empress wave is traveling faster than it is. And so he is worrying. The whole backdrop of Strefan's seemingly strange behavior in 1116 had to do with the Empress wave, an impending wave of possibly psychic, we're not sure, power that's throwing every system that passes through into chaos and crashing a lot of electronics. Strefan is trying to prepare the realm for that event. And in this, he is really worried about the leadership of the realm in case he's not alive by the time the Empress wave gets here. And he's changed some universal personality profiles just to reflect better in this game. So those are all, in my mind, very allowable stretches for a game like this. So basically what the idea is that it's improv. It's a 4-hour time session, and no one can be eliminated, exiled, or killed during the first 3 hours. He wants everybody to be involved and everybody to be role-playing during that time. And the idea is that you are playing one of 5 characters. I will take a look at the 5 characters next. He gives a nice little how-to guide. I'm going to come back to this. But you're going to be playing Emperor Strefan, who is the Emperor of the Imperium in 1116. And we have all his stats in his background. And the background is information that the player needs to know how to role play as Strefan. And he being the author, recommends that one of the most experienced Traveler players actually plays Strephon. So he'll know a lot of the background, he'll know what's happened, but he'll know how to role play it. Keeping in mind, nothing is set in stone in this, and that's why there's no spoilers. This all depends on the player's interactions. So the 5 characters are going to interact. Just because historically in Traveler canon, Strephon is assassinated by Dullinor, oh, big spoiler from 35 years ago. Just because that happens doesn't mean it happens here. This is not a story where inevitably Strephon ends up dead. There are different ways you can play the political intrigue and change the course of the Imperium. But let's take a look at the other 4 characters that you'll be playing. Strephon has the longest write-up and best resources and great support in the Moot. The Moot is the Imperial Congress, if you will. Their only real power is to ratify the Emperor, but they have, of course, other influence and power. Their next character that can be played is Grand Princess Ciencia. And Ciencia is 28 years old, and she is Strephon's daughter and next in line for the throne. A little change in canon here is, well, she's a conservative. She thinks that too much is going into the military and a lot more money should be going into social programs and education. And that's how she's going to change the Imperium as soon as she takes the Iridium throne. She loves her father, but she doesn't agree with many of his policies. She doesn't know anything about the Empress Wave. She thinks that a lot of what's being, quote, wasted, unquote, could be turned toward social benefit. She also has a drug problem, which I thought was a neat little twist here. She is hooked on a drug called Serene Blue, and Prince Varian is her contact for getting her little stash of Serene Blue. And I'm going to explain who Varian is in a moment. And then it goes into her goals and her resources. Prince Lucan. He is 4th in line to the throne, actually, behind his brother Varian. And this is an interesting character to play. Because they're identical twins, Lucan and Varian are both played by the same character. But we find out, as we read our little backdrop here, something's going on with Prince Varian. I don't want to say that. I guess there is one spoiler in here. Something's going on with Prince Varian where Lucan is pretending to be both himself, Lucan, and be Varian. As we know in Traveler canon, Lucan went on to become the emperor of the Imperium during the rebellion era, and he's portrayed basically as a madman on the throne. He's not a nice guy in this, and would take some good role-playing chops to play the 2 different characters. Now we have Archduke Dullinor of Eilish. Dullinor is, of course, in Traveler canon, the assassin of Strephon and his family. And in here, he's come to capital to meet with the Emperor, and he's not sure what he's going to do. He's thinking, hey, maybe I could marry the princess, and even though I would not rule as emperor, I would be emperor, but she would be the ruler, she would have the throne, but I could influence many things behind the throne, because Dullinor's plans really dovetail nicely with the princess's. He feels that the Imperium is too militaristic, and more could be done for education and social uplift. He also thinks technology should be shared more. So it's an interesting character when you go into it, that here he's the black assassin and everything from Traveler canon, and yet here he's a person, which I thought was kind of neat. And here are all his goals and his various resources that he can bring to bear. And then our 5th character you can play is Duke Norris. Duke Norris, of course, the hero of the 5th war in the Spinward Marches, and he is summoned to capital in this version of it. He never was in Traveler canon, but he's summoned here to possibly get yelled at for winning the war before Strephon even heard about it, winning the 5th Frontier War before Strephon even heard about it, or possibly get a pat on the back for a job well done. That is going to be part of the role-playing. So now we take a look at Norris's goals and his resources. Norris is also armed. Interestingly, Dullinor is armed and Norris is armed. And then we get a nice look at the library data. So the idea is that your players would read over the library data and their characters sometime before they would sit down. So at a convention, you would just hand this stuff out, give everybody half an hour, answer any questions, and then go forward. And then we have a nice conversion to Cepheus engines. So this isn't just a traveler adventure. It can also work for Cepheus, and with a little bit of tweaking, you could also do the same thing for Clement Sector. So the idea is that you are playing one of these 5 characters. I realize that Varian / Lucan adds a 6th character, but that's part of the fun of this. So there are a lot of GM tips here. Referee's guide, how-to guide here. And the author says right away, these are not hard and fast rules. These are just tips. So his idea is that you would get together, all 5 characters would be at the table with the GM. The GM would sit back and fold his arms and listen, and the players would start role-playing with each other. And if Strephon and Norris wanted to get up and walk out of the room and talk for 10 minutes, that's perfectly allowable. The idea is you're doing a little empire building. So this is a lot of flavor of the old game Diplomacy, where you're building alliances and things like this. And this is where the role-playing comes in, and this is where the fact that there are spoilers, there really aren't spoilers, because the game changes every time depending on who allies with whom. You could have Norris and Dullinor ally and decide one of them is going to assassinate Strephon and take the throne by right of assassination. Both Norris and Dullinor are bachelors. They're both significantly older than the princess, but it's not unheard of for one of them to marry the princess and again become emperor, be power behind the throne when she ascends the throne. The empress herself, or the princess herself, is not too keen on the dynastic requirements of her lineage. In other words, she doesn't want to have any kids, but her duty is going to insist that she does. So maybe she's talking to one of her potential suitors about the possibility that maybe they'll adopt. Maybe she won't have kids. And then, of course, you have the Lucan Varian situation going on, where the princess needs her fix because her hands are starting to get shaky. She hasn't had any of her little recreational chemicals in a couple of days. And Varian is the princess's contact for that, but we're dealing with Lucan posing as Varian, and Lucan doesn't know anything about the drug situation with the princess. So it's a neat dynamic going on here, and I could see you would need mature role players who would be ready to be at cross purposes with each other without letting it get personal. So at my table, it doesn't get personal very often, but when we play at cross purposes like this, it tends to. It's people kind of decide that their way is the right way, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure that this is going to necessarily be right for my table, but I could absolutely see running something like this at a convention. I am still talking about Jump Point, the Traveler Con I'm proposing in the Chicagoland area. I'm looking for a venue right now. I have the tentative dates of November 5th or November 12th. Those are both Saturdays. And I'm working on getting an answer back from a venue as to whether we have that. I could see this adventure being run at an event like that. I think this would be best run in a convention setting and with 5 people who didn't really play together, didn't really know each other that well. I think that would be the best environment to play this game. So basically what you're doing is you're spending the first 3 hours power brokering. Who wants to work with whom? And who needs what from whom? And you can trade favors and things like that. And you have little things like Norris has a telepath that he's brought to court. The telepath, of course, is completely legal because Norris has his special writ to have a telepath on his staff, but nobody's aware that he's brought him to court. So you can have Norris work with the telepath and read some other minds and try to figure out who's got what going on. And maybe one of them, Dullinor is wearing a black cap, but that black cap is really a scrambler to keep telepaths from reading his mind. You could have that all around. Strephon sitting on the throne. He can't have his mind read. Maybe something like that. Somebody reading Varian's mind would realize that he's not really Varian, he's Lucan. And what to do with that information. So there's a lot of dynamics that are going on here. And I mentioned earlier that both Dullinor and Norris, as warriors of the realm, are armed and are allowed to be in Strephon's presence. This, of course, is what allows, in canon, Dullinor to assassinate Strephon. But you could have the scenario where Norris is the one that assassinates Strephon. You could have it that Norris drops Dullinor. He realizes Dullinor is going to make his play for the throne, and he's going to protect his emperor, so he uses his weapon and drops Dullinor. There's a lot of dynamics, a lot of things you can trade, a lot of horse trading you can do as far as different political agendas. One of the agendas brought forth here, of course, I've talked about is the political spending on the military and on social programs, but another is the possible removal of the psionic suppression laws. Strefan's thinking of lifting those. He believes that that gives the Imperium the best chance to survive the forthcoming Empress Wave. Nobody else knows about the Empress Wave. They just think Strefan's just decided he's going to upend something that's been law in the books for over 300 years on an imperial whim. So there's a lot of dynamics in here and a lot of role-playing. I can see that this would be a lot of fun. This is the first of 3 different adventures that Mr. Ellis has written that are essentially diceless. When I say essentially diceless, there are a few instances in here where you are going to throw some dice, not the least of which is if Dullinor or Norris decide to assassinate somebody, they're going to have to throw the hit. If Dullinor, he needs a 4 to hit a Strefan sitting on his throne. If he rolls Snake Eyes and misses, then that changes the entire course of history. Dullinor will probably be killed by the Imperial Guard at that point, or branded a traitor, any number of things. So that changes the Imperial history. So the author recommends that you go through all of this, and everybody has their secrets and writes notes and things like that. And then as the story wraps at the turning of the 4th hour of the game, the GM goes ahead and he reveals all the little secrets and answers all the questions of what was going on, who was bargaining with whom, and things like that, just to give kind of some closure to the story. So as I've said, I find this a very intriguing idea. I've been looking at it since 2017. I finally pulled the trigger on it, and I'm very glad I did. As I said, this gentleman's got 2 more up there that are essentially similar vein as far as I can read from the descriptions. I'll be picking those up, and I'm going to take a look at those as well. Whether I look at them on the channel or not will depend on response to this video and if there's any interest in me looking at on the channel. But I'm going to buy them for myself because I enjoyed this immensely, and I'm looking forward to reading those other 2. So that's all I've got to say today for... oh, sorry, one more shout out for the artwork. Boyd L. Stone did the artwork, and Timothy Collinson did the maps. So congratulations to you guys. This is a very nice little product. It's I think it was $5 for the PDF. I did not see print on demand for it, but for $5, this was an entertaining little read, and I look forward to possibly running this someday down the line. So that's it for today from page 121. Please remember the subscriptions and the Patreon. Any comments below, any conversations you want to have, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I'll leave the link for this in the section below. And that's it for today from page 121. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.